From year to year, month to month, week to week, and day to day, people across the world are obsessed with a phenomenon that is professional wrestling. But why? 101 reasons to love professional wrestling. There are many components of professional wrestling that should be both understood and celebrated, in no particular order. Inside politics. Every culture, society, or organization has their own set of norms and rules that it is founded on. Going back to even before the double crossing of Julius Caesar, there have always been scandals. There is always a chain of command, a king of the jungle, and a lay of the land. With this comes controversy, inner bickering, and internal battles. Of course, there are governments and communities that have policies that are enforced by law, but all cultures have their own regulatory scrutiny. There are many examples of specific groups with specific rules. In sports, it's the kangaroo courts deciding how to manage their team from within. Be it a code of ethics, the code of the samurai, or the code of the mafia and street gangs, there are both spoken and unspoken rules. Even your local high school has a student council. Every tribe has a chief. In professional wrestling, it's the promoter, the owner, or the respected veteran that guides the pulse of the locker room. Professional wrestling had its own way of dealing with internal issues. The infamous Montreal Screwjob is the first thing that comes to mind. Bret the Hitman Hart was leaving the company and did not want to drop the WWF Championship to the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels in his home country of Canada. The story then goes that WWF promoter Vince McMahon had no choice but to pull one over and essentially screw the Canadian hero. This messy story is one of the biggest controversies in wrestling's long, illustrious history. However, it is not the only story of this type. There are plenty more cases of locker room dirt. In any form of collaborative art or team sports, there are those who are unhappy with their role, their money, or their schedule. This leads to wrestlers airing their dirty laundry about management. When a wrestler needs money, attention, or a soapbox to preach from, they will work with random wrestling-related production companies, podcasts, and websites to have revealing interviews about what goes or has gone on backstage. These shoot-style interviews have blessed the fans with a deep look behind the curtain. And just like Eric Bischoff proclaimed, controversy sells. The roar among the wrestling community rises when the juiciest of gossip, news, and interactions occur. The cause and effect of these backstage antics have resulted in some of wrestling's biggest events. If Triple H had not been punished for taking part in the infamous curtain call, a moment where real-life friends broke kayfabe to hug goodbye in the ring, then Stone Cold Steve Austin would have never have won the King of the Ring and cut his career-making 316 promo. Then if Stone Cold Steve Austin himself hadn't had shunned the idea of helping Jeff Jarrett get over, then it's easy to wonder if he had ever left and started TNA Wrestling. The same for Cody Rhodes. If he had been given more creative freedom and a better place on the card, would he have ever left and started All Elite Wrestling? There are a whole lot of inside stories and lore about professional wrestling. If it's not the murmurs of Hulk Hogan being hard to work with, then it's Dusty Rhodes holding people down, or it would be Booker T and Batista getting into a real life fight while shooting a commercial. Things have gotten out of hand, like when Sid Vicious stabbed Arn Anderson with a pair of scissors, or Enzo Amore being so obnoxious that he was kicked out of the locker room, or like a million more of these little stories. These type of shenanigans used to be settled behind closed doors, and fans were lucky to hear just a small rumor of the reality. Now the modern wrestler takes to their social media to express themselves and their issues with management or their peers. To someone on the outside, these wacky tales can be quite tedious, but when you take on a passion of professional wrestling, you can't help but get involved, get engaged, and just eat it all up. Family tradition. A family is a group of people related either by birth, affinity, or co-residence. This primal instinct maintains order and the overall well-being of society. Families have their own rituals and traditions. Some generations pass down heirlooms, some their family secret recipes, their passion for baseball, or even their love for professional wrestling. Within the world of professional wrestling, there are essentially 4 classes of families to be part of. You have your family at home. It's your father, uncle, or grandmother that have their television set for the weekly matches or randomly took you to a local show. With good child rearing, some of us are even fortunate enough to have wrestling in our lives before our first steps. Even if a fan's family hates wrestling, there is a family built in within the fan base itself. There are arenas with thousands and thousands of like-minded people who are all there for one thing: wrestling. If we come across someone who follows wrestling in the real world, then it can open up a world of possibilities. When you speak the native language, it's a lot easier to feel at home. There is also a family within the business. The brothers and sisters who have graced the ring or experienced the backstage world are in fact their own family. It's been often compared to the mafia. Through the shared passion, struggle, and respect for the industry, once a professional wrestler, always a professional wrestler. Like any family, there are fights, people who hate each other, cliques, and those you'd rather not sit next to you at the holiday table. Regardless, the camaraderie between those who make the magic for us is lifelong. Then there are wrestling's first families. These are the lineages of performers that have come from past generations of other performers. The McMahon family has had multiple generations take the helm of control over the WWF, WWF, and WWE. But it doesn't end there at all. There are the Harts from Calgary, the Von Erichs from Texas, the Guerreros, the Ortons, the Rhodes, the Johnsons, the Flairs, the Funks, the Carinos, and many more that keep the family names and legacies not just alive, but in big lights and engraved on championship belts. A fan of wrestling knows these names and knows the stories of these living legacies. Professional wrestling as we know it would have been much different, and it's easy to say less fun without these fabled families doing their part. So whether it's blood, friends, your peers, or a combination of the three, when you're a fan of professional wrestling, you enjoy it, you absorb it, and you love it with kindred spirits. The shared experience of a moment in professional wrestling is always best with family. Dream matches. Who'd win in a fight? Batman or Superman? Who'd win in an arm wrestling contest? Tom Hanks or Bill Murray? Who'd win in a cook-off? Gordon Ramsay or Julia Childs? Who'd win in a dance-off between Johnny Carson and Conan O'Brien? How about a game of hopscotch between Pee Wee Herman and Weird Al Yankovic? Maybe a cage fight between Judy Garland and Emma Stone? A home run battle between Babe Ruth and Aaron Judge? A boxing match between Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson? It goes on and on. Hypothetical competition is a pastime of anyone with a little bit of fandom and a whole lot of imagination. The idea of dream matches in professional wrestling is nothing new. There have always been fantasy warfare. It's two performers matched up due to the status of being the best. Other circumstances can make for a dream match as well, like who is the best of a certain weight class, a certain era, or a certain style of fighting. The hefty task of living up to the dream match can be quite daunting. The anticipation that builds becomes an unmeasurable weight for the dream opponents to carry on their shoulders. Tickets were sold, pay-per-views were ordered, programs, shirts, and merchandise were printed, and the torturous wait is finally over. Then, there are two inevitable results of a dream match. It will be magical, the match will electrify the crowd. The expectations are not only met, but exceeded in spades. Our dreams come true, and we all go home and sleep like happy babies. On the contrary, bad matches happen. The match falls flat, the crowd falls asleep or turns on the performers. Our dream match becomes a nightmare, and then the inevitable rematch, a recurring nightmare. Then there are the dream matches that center around two iconic characters who never crossed paths due to being in different promotions. This was sadly the case with The Undertaker and Sting, who still many want to see go face to face. But their times have obviously passed. Sometimes our dream matches just never happen. History misses the boat on giving us the desired battle. As the Thin White Duke so eloquently put it, time may change me, but I can't trace time. Whatever the case, these never going to happen dream matches will forever be craved and forever be debated. But that's what's great about professional wrestling. The next big dream match could always be right around the corner. But sadly, sometimes it's a big match that just got away. It's not likely, but still possible to see a Rob Van Dam and Ricochet match to see who can fly the highest. There wouldn't be too many fans upset if CM Punk got in the squared circle and squared off with the likes of Adam Cole. It's even more doubtful we'll ever get a Shawn Michaels versus AJ Styles to see who is the best pure performer. Of course, we missed out on a battle of the icons of their eras and a Stone Cold Steve Austin and Hulk Hogan match. Or how about a Hayabusa vs Shinsuke Nakamura? Andre the Giant going monstrous toe to monstrous toe with Braun Strowman would have been fun to see. Then you have to think who would have won between Daniel Bryan and Dusty Rhodes, or John Cena taking on Ultimate Warrior, Triple H versus Harley Race, or even Kofi Kingston versus Ravishing Rick Rude. Who wouldn't want to see Bret the Hitman Hart and Kurt Angle stretch each other for what would have been a technical clinic? Would minds not have been blown by a Ric Flair and Kenny Omega match? The likelihood of a Steiner Brothers versus Usos tag team battle is incredibly slim. And then there is no chance we'll ever get to see the late great Macho Man Randy Savage take on the Velveteen Dream over the master of the elbow drop. But like every dream match, it's definitely enjoyable to ponder the possibilities. Dream on, professional wrestling fans. Dream on. Music gimmicks. It is said that music is a universal language. Anyone with two functional ears can enjoy a great song. With a passion for a great tune, there have always been an aura of celebrity around a great musician. From the classical composers to the first big-time rock stars, musicians have become celebrated figures for their talents and fame. With the rise of character-based performers in professional wrestling, it would have been silly for the industry not to adopt some of the rock stars' swagger. There has been music in wrestling going back to the early days with characters like George Ringo, the Wrestling Beetle, working in smaller Midwest territories. But it would be Michael P.S. Hayes and the Freebirds to ignite the movement with their self-sung 1980s blues rock Bad Street USA. Rock and roll would go on to forever have a couch to crash on in the world of professional wrestling. One of the best tag teams of all time were the Rock and Roll Express. In 1991, Van Hammer would represent the awkward time between hair metal and grunge. Raven would take care of being a suitable frontman for grunge rock in wrestling. The current scene features the likes of Elias, who is actually quite the guitar player, carry the torch of rock and roll gimmicks. In the 1980s, we were also introduced to the Honky Tonk Man, a man in a jumpsuit with slicked back hair and his swiveling hips. A character like this would be brushed off by many, but Wayne Ferris created a Hall of Fame career around the musical gimmick, and as of now, is the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion of all time. As music evolved, so did the music characters. Hip-hop gimmicks would become a staple in the industry, with the likes of PG-13 showing up in the early 90s, Oscar from Men on a Mission dropping flows, New Jack's violent ring work was a mirror to the violent gangster rap of the time. And then John Cena was rapping in the early 2000s all the way to one of the greatest careers of all time. And of course, R-Truth rapping his way to the ring for literally decades now. With Southern wrestling, the concept of a country music gimmick would often be used. The mid-90s had Jeff Jarrett presenting himself as a country music singer from Nashville, Tennessee. Then we'd see the West Texas Rednecks team up as a country group that was not shy about their disdain for rap, with their oh-so-wittily titled I Hate Rap single. Then we would see a legit vocalist revealed in the Mickie James hardcore country phase in TNA wrestling. At certain points, the musical gimmicks reflect some of the more embarrassing times, like 3 Count, a 3-man boy band in WCW made up of 3 very talented high flyers. Rock stars and legitimate musicians have had their place in the ring as well. Chris Jericho's band Fozzy has seen a lot of success, but he is not alone. Jimmy Hart, Jeff Hardy, Lita, Ron Killings, and others have released studio-recorded music. Comparable to the modern rock star, these folks spend their lives on the road, entertaining thousands and thousands every night. However, the life of a professional wrestler is a bit more tolling. The rock star doesn't have to dodge flying folding chairs, but if you're a band like Nickelback, a flying beer bottle is never off the table. Australian rock icons AC/DC gave us, "For those about the rock, we salute you." But for those about to use rock as their gimmick, we, the professional wrestling fan, salute you. Stables. Tribes go back to the dawn of time. It's a natural human instinct to join forces with those who are blood in the same location, or even just like-minded. Take this concept, add a little ultra-violence, and you have a gang. As the movie The Warriors so poetically showcased, when you're on a journey back home, you're bound across many turfs and some very eccentric gangs. A professional wrestling fan taking a journey through their fandom are likely to tell you similar tales. In the 1970s, there was the First Family, the Heenan family, the Dangerous Alliance, and others. But in wrestling, the gangs are called stables. In the world away from the ring, a stable would be used to describe a group of horses. In professional wrestling, there's only one group of horses that need to be discussed: the Four Horsemen. Formed in 1986, the Four Horsemen were one of the first big-time groups. These gentlemen are not just in the conversation for greatest stable of all time. Frankly, they are the conversation. The first incarnation of the Horsemen featured Nature Boy Ric Flair, the Enforcer Arn Anderson, Ole Anderson, and Tully Blanchard, with J.J. Dillon as their manager. These men are all Hall of Famers on their own, but together they were easily the cream of the crop and unstoppable. Then over the years, the men with 4 extended fingers would have some of the greatest members, including Sting, Lex Luger, and more elite status wrestlers. While there is no doubt on what is the greatest stable of all time, there are quite a few other legendary stables. You have to include the New World Order in this discussion. The NWO was a group of Hall of Famers in their own right, with Hulk Hogan, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, Sean Waltman, and a handful of others. For a few years during the 1990s, this was the hottest thing in the business and had a gigantic amount of pop culture crossover. But like most good things in wrestling, the NWO would eventually fizzle out. Still, the impact of the New World Order was made, and they will forever be part of history. Then there's Degeneration X, another Hall of Fame stable, started by the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, and the ninth wonder of the world, Chyna. With their crude and sophomoric humor, DX made their marks with crotch chops and vulgar sayings. During the Attitude Era in the WWF, this was not only perfectly acceptable, but it was a huge success. Sadly, Shawn Michaels would leave due to injury, but Triple H added X-Pac Sean Waltman and the New Age Outlaws to the mix. The group would last for several years, and to this day, they are featured on special events. The NWO and DX were not the only stables of the 1990s. There was the Dungeon of Doom, the $1 Million Corporation, the Flock, the Nation of Domination, and it goes on and on. The 2000s would see Evolution, Aces and Eights, the Embassy, and others show up and represent the long lineage of wrestling stables. Then in the 2010s, lightning was captured in a bottle when New Japan Pro Wrestling's Bullet Club hit the scene. This stable had the likes of AJ Styles, Finn Balor, Adam Cole, Gallows, Anderson, and other global stars at one point. Once the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, Adam Page, and Cody Rhodes got on board, the fans of independent and international wrestling ate it up. These guys would eventually leave New Japan Pro Wrestling and start All Elite Wrestling, but the Bullet Club itself continues to go strong into the 2020s. It would be criminal not to mention NXT's best stable of all time, and arguably the best stable of the 2010s, the Undisputed Era. Adam Cole, Roderick Strong, Bobby Fish, and Kyle O'Reilly have shown a whole new generation of fans how to pull off a great group with style and absolutely no grace. There has also been a long tradition of three-man groups that have left a lasting impression, going back to the Freebirds, to Demolition, to the Triple Threat, the two of the most successful groups of all time, the New Day and the Shield. Stables are not always successful or as cool as the ones that have been mentioned. The Oddities, Los Boricuas, Kai and Tai, the Mean Street Posse, and the Right to Censor are all forgettable, or better forgotten. Gang warfare should never be an acceptable solution. However, in professional wrestling, it is part of the pastime and can be quite fun if done properly. Whether you call a united group a stable, a cause, or a gang, a professional wrestler can accomplish quite a bit thanks to a well-formed collaboration of violence. Table spots. A folding table is a convenient piece of mobile furniture. It is a pretty simple but necessary design. A flat surface with foldable legs. The origins of the folding table actually goes back to ancient Egypt and would be utilized through the colonial and Victorian eras. The folding table would benefit from the mass production of the 20th century. In 1951, the folding table would be patented by Boris Cohen and Joseph Pucci. Thanks to Boris and Joseph, fans of professional wrestling were gifted another tool of choreographed torture. The first time a folding table was used in the history of the squared circle is often debated. Some say tables were used as early as the 1940s, others credit the 1970s. Regardless, it is hard to imagine a street fight or a crazy brawl not spilling into or on top of one of these pieces of convenient furniture. In the late 70s, the gigantic Joe LeDuc threw Jerry the King Lawler over the top rope and onto the announcer's table. In 1984, Randy Savage pile drove Ricky Morton through a table in Memphis. Then in 1989, Terry Funk would not only turn on, but would pile drive Nature Boy Ric Flair on a table in the NWA. It did not break, but it did add a lot of fire to their scorching rival. The first WWF broken table spot happened when Big Daddy Cool Diesel knocked Bret the Hitman Hart off the ring and right through the ringside announcer's table. From there, it snowballed. The shock and awe of a destroyed table would evolve and become part of WWF and then WWE's creative playbook. When something is hardcore in North American wrestling, it can typically be traced back to Extreme Championship Wrestling. A large part of the rise of the table destruction can be credited to one man, the homicidal, suicidal, and the genocidal Sabu. Sabu would use at least one table in just about all of his matches. Then the Dudley Boys would also adopt the table as a big part of their personas. When Bubba Ray shouts, "Devon, get the table," you know exactly what's coming. Exploding wood. ECW would also have Public Enemy, Mike Awesome, and just about everyone else breaking tables as often as possible. Then of course, there's Mick Foley. Whether it's his deathmatch start as Cactus Jack, his psychotic Mankind character, or even his groovy Dude Love, the folding table has had an impact in his career as much as his great promos, cheap pops, and socks with hand-drawn faces on them. WWE would have the Hardys, Edge and Christian, and the Dudleys annihilate the wooden structure during the heyday of the TLC era. It clearly did not end there. The art of rearranging furniture the hard way has become part of wrestling almost as much as the wrist lock. Whether it's set up as normal, rested in a corner, engulfed in flames, rested between the ring and the guardrail, or however else a creative performer can come up with, forceful demolition of a folding table always gets the fans on their feet, even if that means the ringside announcers have nowhere to rest their elbows. The look-around handshake. Wise men have made the eloquent proclamation that trust is something that is earned. In life, we are to trust our parents, authority, and the friends we have developed a legitimate bond with. What happens when that trust is broken? Would Judas have turned on Christ? Would Julius Caesar have been stabbed to death at the Theater of Pompeii? Would we still be calling traitors Benedict Arnold if in fact Benedict Arnold himself didn't turn his back on America? Or would we even need a prison system at all if everyone followed the rules? Betrayal runs rampant in a society of ruthless people looking out for themselves. One gesture to cement the act of trust and goodwill is a firm handshake. This symbolic act is no stranger to the culture of professional wrestling. However, it's approached a bit differently than how normal society handles it. Before another wrestler's extended hand is accepted, a longtime trope of the sport is to take a moment, absorb the situation, and slowly and exaggeratedly look around. Trusting just anyone is proven to be a foolish choice. The character of the performer offering said handshake must be evaluated. This, along with the reason the hand is being offered, are factors that must be considered. The handshake can be offered by a competitor after a long rivalry. It could be after a great match, a gesture for calling a truce. There are a plethora of reasons for an extended hand. The handshake, whether you choose to accept or not, can lead to new journeys in one's career. If the shake is not accepted, it is often a sign of a wrestler knowing better than just throwing their trust out there all willy-nilly. Anyone who works in logic or experience can tell you that these handshakes don't often work out. You might get attacked from behind, made a fool of, and left with egg and or blood on your naive face. Still, this is not always the case. Sometimes, respect is respect. Sometimes the gesture is genuine. Sometimes you make a new friend. But you just never know. History has proven that professional wrestling is a dog-eat-dog world, and these performers are all cursed with milk-bone flavored undergarments. For years, this little gem has been part of professional wrestling. This is one of those little things that lifelong fans come to just accept as perfectly normal. Whether you agree or don't agree that this tradition is one of the more fun aspects of wrestling, maybe we should just shake on it. Or maybe not. Hypothetical entrance music. When you're a fan of a sport, or really any form of entertainment, and you have any type of imagination, it's hard not to picture yourself as part of it. If you love superhero movies, it should be safe to say that at one point you thought about what superpower you would want. If you are a fan of sports, it's easy to think of what jersey number you would want to wear. We are all fans of something. We all have opinions, we all have perception about who we are and what we represent. This is true, even as fans of professional wrestling. There is a vast library of interesting stories oddball theories, and memorable facts that many professional wrestling fans share, debate, and react to. We also take time to put ourselves in their shoes, or boots and kick pads, of the wrestlers we regularly watch. An imaginative fan will consider all the possibilities of a situation, including what our entrance music would be. If you've ever utilized a create a wrestler feature in a video game, attempted backyard wrestling, or had an epiphany while sitting in traffic or during a morning shower, then it is very likely you know exactly what song you would come in through the entrance curtains with. Sometimes, it just happens out of nowhere. You'll be out and about and hear the opening guitar riff or the contagious beat of a song you've heard a million times and start to visualize that specific break you want to enter the ring with for an awesome made-up character, yourself, or even an alternate choice to a favorite you watch every week. There are a copious amount of factors to ponder when pondering. What kind of character do you want to portray? If you're into hip-hop, odds are your music will be hip-hop. If you want to be a dark and spooky character, your music will be dark and spooky. What kind of energy do you want to create? Do you want to get the crowd pumped? Do you want to shock them? Is your plan to create a grand entrance similar to Nature Boy Ric Flair or Macho Man Randy Savage? Then maybe a classical tune is right for you. Then what is your favorite band? Your favorite song? What gets you pumped? What would get you in the right frame of mind to enter the ring and perform at your best? A wrestler on television might not always have the option to what they want to come out to due to creative management having differing opinions or outrageous rights fees that a company refuses to shell out for. You do not have this dilemma. In a hypothetical world, the possibilities are endless. So let's break this down. When you hear the announcer shout, "Now, coming to the ring," from wherever you are, weighing in at whatever you weigh, and standing at however tall you are, what hypothetical entrance music comes to your mind when you are holding up your replica championship belt in your mirror? Ladder matches. A ladder is a structure, a piece of equipment, that consists of horizontal steps placed in between two vertical supports. Its purpose is to reach an elevated area and is a standard tool for firemen, painters, and even swimmers looking to exit a pool. Then there is also the metaphor that is often used about our working careers, which is climbing up the ladder of success. While this is absolutely true in professional wrestling, it is not always just a metaphor. You literally have to climb the ladder of success. Then when you're up there, you have to retrieve a dangling championship belt. This is a ladder match. A championship belt, or a briefcase, or really any object is hung from the ceiling. Then the competitors of the match have one objective: get it down. And the only way to achieve this goal is to use a company-provided ladder. When clawing and climbing this ladder of success, anything goes. If you want to win this specialty match, you should be prepared for pain. There is already a ladder present and anything goes. It is easy to imagine the pending carnage. Of course, this means the wrestlers use the ladder as a weapon. You can slam someone on it, smash them between it, swing it in pursuit of knocking them down, or even leap off of it onto your opponent to add to the splendid spectacle that is a ladder match. The evolution of this match has led to some of the most creative spots and visuals wrestling has ever seen. The origins of the ladder match go back to the early 1970s. Stu Hart's Stampede Wrestling would feature the first ever of its kind, when Dan Crowfoot and Tor Kamada were climbing for a wad of money. In 1987, the British-based World of Sport would showcase a Disco Challenge ladder match, where Kendo Nagasaki and Clive Myers would use a ladder to reach a gold disco record. The Canadian-based Stampede Wrestling would also have a ladder match in 1983 that saw Bret Hart take on Bad News Allen. Bret Hart would take this idea with him to the World Wrestling Federation, where he and Shawn Michaels would climb and fight for the Intercontinental title belt. The ladder match would reach new heights in 1994 when the bad guy, Razor Ramon, would defeat the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels, at WrestleMania 10 in what many would consider one of the best matches of all time. This match not only brought the ladder match to the mainstream, but it set the bar very high. So high that not many one-on-one ladder matches today come close to its impact or enjoyment. These two would have a remarkable rematch a year later, but this time with Michaels winning. The Rock and Triple H tore it down at SummerSlam in 1998. And then who could forget the Hardys battling it out with Edge and Christian in '99 to reach for a bag of cash and Terry Reynolds' managerial rights. That tag team match would open the doors to what many fans are accustomed to today. With the inclusion of the Dudley Boys, the Hardys and Edge and Christian would unleash the TLC phenomenon. That's tables, ladders, and chairs. Since then, outside of 2013, there have been at least one ladder match a year in the WWE, with many years having more than one. The WWE still has ladder matches from time to time, but you can for sure count on the annual Money in the Bank match. A match that sees multiple competitors claw, climb, and crush each other in their pursuit towards reaching the Money in the Bank briefcase. A symbolic briefcase that grants the winner a title shot on demand. It's not just the WWE. When Dusty Rhodes would take on Tully Blanchard in a barbed wire ladder match, with a prize of $100,000 hanging from the ceiling. 10 years later, the likes of Eddie Guerrero and Sean Waltman would battle over the United States title. Goldberg and Scott Hall would reach for a taser. The Young Dragons and 3 Count would reach for a record contract, and many more. Extreme Championship Wrestling gave us Stairway to Hell ladder matches. Impact Wrestling would have their ladder matches with an Ultimate X twist. Ring of Honor would put out some great ladder wars. And the ladder match itself has already been part of All Elite Wrestling's early history. As with anything, times change and things evolve. The modern ladder match can have more and more competitors added. More and more ladders added to the war, more and more stipulations, and more creativity unveiled. But some traditions are just always going to be part of the match by design. Call it a cliche or a tired act, but the slow climb is never going away. This is when someone climbs slower than a deceased turtle up the ladder for suspenseful purposes. Rung by rung, the wrestler ascends towards the belt. The anticipation builds. The wrestler reaches, and then it's simple. They get knocked off, or they inevitably retrieve the prize and victory. Would this be silly to someone on the outside? Of course. But you just have to accept it as wrestling being wrestling, and there's nothing wrong with that. You might not always get a classic like Razor and Shawn, but a ladder match is a lot like the pizza of professional wrestling. Even when it's bad, it's still pretty awesome. Heel turns. Sometimes, good people go bad. Everyone wants to be the hero of their own story, but sometimes one has nowhere else to turn but evil. An individual's moral compass can take them in various directions. Sometimes that direction is towards bad. It's a sad reality, but there are copious amounts of examples of this throughout written history. We're talking about Michael Corleone going bad and embracing his new role as the Godfather. Harvey Dent going from pillar of the Gotham community to a full-fledged monster as Two-Face. Or it could also just be the character's fate as seen in Anakin Skywalker becoming Darth Vader. The villain rises with an angry edge, a chip on their shoulder, and a goal of destroying the hero. When the friendship sails, there is always a chance of being thrown overboard or sinking. Of course, this is a long-time tradition in the world that is professional wrestling. Everyone loves the good guy in wrestling. He's done good, he tries hard, and he's of good moral character. And he's going to do his best to make sure you, the fan, go home happy. Then, out of nowhere, they snap. They beat up another good guy. They let their real emotions be known. Or they just flat out change their character and motives. It's that big turning point in a character arc that gives everyone a chance to refresh and try something new. There have been many memorable and historic heel turns in professional wrestling. In the 1980s, the immortal Hulk Hogan was as face as you could get. Because of this, it was very easy for the company to create new bad guys just by having them turn on the Hulkster. This could include the likes of Andre the Giant being tired of Hogan's long reign as champion, Macho Man Randy Savage turning in a jealous rage. Paul Orndorff would reveal his heel turn on Hogan by joining the Heenan family, and even Tugboat would turn on Hogan to become Typhoon of the Natural Disasters. Then in the late 90s, Hogan would return the favor by breaking the hearts of his fans as he turned on them and WCW. In what many consider the biggest heel turn of all time, this event would lead to the creation of his heel persona, Hollywood Hulk Hogan. Families have seen heel turns as well. Owen Hart's vicious attack on his older brother Bret's leg laid the groundwork for Owen's rise up the card. The Hardy Boys have seen their share of drama as well. This proves that while blood might be thicker than water, it is definitely not thicker than gold. Tag teams rarely last forever. This sentiment was in full display when Shawn Michaels threw Marty Jannetty through a window in a moment that has gone down in history as one of the more famous betrayals. It's not just Hogan, family squabbles, and broken tag teams. Sometimes the heartbreak of a heel turn is just a shocking occurrence. There are still fans to this day with PTSD over the times Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock sold their souls to align with the evil Mr. McMahon. Mentor Bruno Sammartino never expected his protege Larry Zbyszko to turn on him, and no one would have ever imagined Paul Bearer turning on The Undertaker. That is just a few of the more vile and unexpected turns in professional wrestling. There are many more in the past, and many more to come in the future. Wherever there is a hero, there is someone waiting to stab them in the back. So if you ever find yourself feeling like a hero in your own story, beware. Because as Stone Cold Steve Austin put it, DTA, don't trust anyone.